Anytime it's not like Parliament, you don't need to.
I got sign in.
You
I
know,
got sign
you
in.
got sign in.
Okay.
All you got to do is keep
Okay,
your
okay.
microphone. Okay, PFP. Let me go straight into it. What is the PFPs when you're re-elected into Parliament? What would be your main focus in Parliament?
I let the win. The win you're re-elected. I appreciate that. We will continue to focus on what we always have. A lot of times persons have asked us, and Raeyhon has spoken about it a lot from a legislative perspective, and I think that Parliament actually and the Ombudsman, the former Ombudsman, and many other High Council of Advice have said, the most important role of Parliament is to hold government accountable. And I think from asking questions, from pressuring on the points that matter for the country, whether you're the small man or not, or the big man, we have always focused on accountability, on ethical decision making, and about a month after the hack with anybody for a meeting. So I said, okay, I told Raeyhon, I'll just call for a question and bring in the then Minister of VROMI, who was acting as shareholder rep, I guess, in that capacity, to answer questions about the hack that took down GB's billing system and still has some of us. I myself got to wait 2-3 months to get bills that I just pay off. I assume I paid off, 3-4 months before. So I think that has been our focus always, and it may sound different to persons, but I think people have also been kind of led astray and confused as to what the purpose of Parliament is when it comes to holding government accountable and acting as that supervisor then for the government. Even today, I've sent questions to the current crop of ministers, even though it's on some decisions that some of them did not take. For example, the weapons dealership, to the Minister of Justice, trying to get some clarity because a lot of people are concerned about that. So that is what we plan to continue to do in Parliament. That I dropped off for the Minister of Finance Directory for the National Accountability, so that we can finally start to put into place what the law itself has required to manage public money, so your money, basically.
What's your take on electoral reform?
So I think it's one of those many things, and the best question a lot. And I think it's one of the things that we've said, there's several different options to electoral reform. The first thing, for example, that the MP Minister, as well as former MP Raeyhon Peterson proposed, is the straightening of the curtain. It's not significant, but it is accountable. And stopping what we know impacts actually the outcome of election, vote by. And it actually, I think that small but very significant change was a major part of changing electoral reform. I think when you look at how the point of view of legislatively, I think we have to examine different options you can have. The biggest issue you have, Fernando, is that everybody says, oh, we need to legislate that I can't take this seat. Or, for example, that somebody. The reality is the system we have basically means that you have to actually have a good character. You can't legislate character. So the idea of basically saying that the system, a party goes, and it can happen sometimes. People can leave a party, people can say, you know what, you want to put a law in place that fundamentally doesn't match with my beliefs. That's when you should jump ship. You shouldn't be jumping ship because your brother didn't get a contract, or because somebody you don't like anymore, and they tell you to very personal reasons have been the reasons why our system doesn't work. It is not the system itself that doesn't work. The second question then becomes as a more, but we also look at, for example, like the possibility of a second runoff, for example. That's the legislation. You have to change the law, of course, on that, but those things you can kind of put into place and change it. But I think the idea of
There we go. Bringing down the foundation. reform. For me, as Amikam said, be informed. When we say it in Samaritan, the only thing that we think is, oh, we got to take away Article 59, which gives the Prime Minister the ability to send us to elections, meaning dissolving Parliament. Or that is, people are the political parties, because a lot of these people are people who, for example, the last time we had Kevin Mingret, he joined the Now Slate, I think, 2 or 3 weeks before postulation. So when you do not vet your candidates and you don't look at them based on their ideologies, but more on the long side of their popularity, then you as a party are subjecting the people to characters that might not understand what their role is, and therefore try to ship jump. And to this extent, I have 2 comments to make. First of all, the lynch law, which basically is about popularity instead of looking at the list, the chronological order of the list. That for me is one of the things that kind of boosts ship jumping. And why? Look in the past. A lot of the people, actually, I would say all who ship jumped, none of them were in the top of that list. All of them got their seat based on the lynch law. All of them were low or down on the list. And the idea of a political party and setting the numbers has to do a lot with how the party works. Normally you have the party leader, your deputy leader, or so in Aruba. Everywhere else, only we have that. What's basically individualizing the parliamentary seat. But we need to understand that before we can talk about electoral reform. To my personal opinion, electoral reform is a constitution. For me, what a good electoral reform would be for Samaritan is proxy voting. People who are by law supposed to be able to vote cannot vote, etc. And the law expects us as individuals who get elected to have a certain type of respect, a certain type of standard. And to the misconception that you can legislate to not ship jump, that's not legally, that's not what it's about.
I could touch a bit on something that was actually proposed towards the end of the last term, before elections, by now Minister, then MP Grisha Martin, which was regulating independent members of parliament. Because right now, when you declare yourself independent, you are suddenly considered a faction.
Yeah.
You get staff, you get to travel to IPCO and have that voice. So there are examples. Almost like you get last term had the 5 factions that are parties, ourselves, UD, etc., and then you had 5 independent members.
Well, I was going to look at it. Suppose everybody declared.
Imagine.
Independent
factions.
Exactly. So that's something that's also something that is now being discussed, and hopefully once we're elected, we can continue the discussion on how to make it less attractive to do that. Yeah.
And another thing I want to look at is the screening process. Minister screening. That there's an individual who could just look at you and say, or whatever reason, I don't think you fit to be a minister, whereas that is based on that person's personal feeling.
Yep.
One governor might say, there's no problem there. And then a next governor could say, no, I think that's detrimental to the country. So it boils down to feelings now. Whereas it should be a clear point, because it depends on who they are. You understand?
Yeah.
So what's your feeling on that? You have been a victim, I call it a victim